And so the mayor sent out this mailer which says basically the facts don't lie. And on it, there are a bunch of facts that he tries to make out are really dominantly important. And he wants you to believe that the schools are in great shape. He's a big friend of the schools. And he doesn't want you to hear about the major facts which are driving the schools in a very negative direction right now. And so the thing that matters coming to the schools is what facts matter. And I'll get to the mailer here in a moment and tell you about its facts, because some of them aren't actually facts. The most important facts for me are not whether the mayor was involved in negotiations or bought the South Side School, because any mayor would have done that, because we know we have to build a South Side School, and he paid for that with $6 million of COVID money. So he didn't hurt the taxpayers at all. It was a dead simple thing to do. That's one of the facts here. The important things are that Mama's schools are in crisis. We have experienced teachers leaving the school system at about 3 times the normal rate, and I'll explain to you how that came to be. The other thing is that student performance has dropped in each one of the last 4 years, which is an unprecedented plummeting of student performance. And the last thing, as everyone well knows, the school buses have been late for 3 years, and finally the school committee intervened and took over the busing operation. The city side is responsible, or was responsible, for the school bus contract. So they take full responsibility for managing that contract and making sure it works. So here's the thing. The school buses were late. Why was that? Well, we had bus drivers who were paid $29 an hour when the market rate was $34. Now, what was Marlborough paying next door? $34, same bus company. So all the bus drivers went over and drove buses for Marlborough. They didn't have a late bus problem at all. So we did. And so even then, in talking about buses, the mayor had an opportunity a couple of years ago, and NRT came to a school committee meeting and said, look, for $500,000 additional in the contract a year, we'd raise the bus driver pay to $34. Well, the mayor just ignored that. That was a really great way to have solved the problem at low cost. But instead, remarkably, a couple of months later, the mayor went and renegotiated the whole contract. Didn't do that $500,000 adjustment to solve the problem. He renegotiated the entire contract, and that ended up costing the city $1.8 million more, not the $500,000 that NRT had offered, $1.8 million more, and the bus driver pay only went from 29 to 31. The most remarkable thing about that was NRT actually offered $32.50 to drivers, but the city knocked that down to 31, even though the school committee wanted 34. So the mayor had no idea what was going on with the school committee and negotiated a very tiny increase for drivers, which consequently at 1.3 million more than the $500,000 that NRT had offered. And so we ended up paying a lot more money and not solving the problem. That's terrible management and very bad fiscal policy for the mayor. And then remarkably, this was negotiated in something like August. And then in September, on September the 6th actually, in a city council meeting a couple of years ago, he claimed that the bus drivers were paid $34 an hour. Well, no one in the council apparently knew that that was not the case. So I pointed it out, and 6 weeks later he retracted and said, oh, I got that wrong. So it shows that he had actually no close connection to the negotiations, didn't know what was going on with the school buses, and any claim, as he has in this thing, to have helped lead the city's response to prevent a school bus strike just hours before drivers walked out is completely irrelevant. These are irrelevant, 6 irrelevant facts here, and I'll get to the others. So let me go from buses to the teacher's contract. He said, I helped negotiate a new teacher's contract without the labour unrest seen in other cities. Well, the mayor actually doesn't negotiate the teacher's contract. The school committee does. So he didn't do that at all. So then, here's another fact. He obtained funding to replace roofs on 5 school buildings that will accommodate solar panels. It kind of gives you the implication that he's all for solar. Well, he didn't do a single solar installation on any roof in the city in the 4 years that he was mayor. All of the the solar roof in Fuller and at the McAuliffe Library in Knobscot were initiated and done before he became mayor. So he got the money for it, but then only 3 roofs were actually replaced because the school department didn't have enough personnel to manage 5 school roof replacements. And in the last budget, they actually cut the position that would have enabled that. So the mayor is disconnected from what is needed in replacing roofs. He's disconnected from what happens in negotiations. And he really was out to lunch completely on the school's buses. And then the final fact here is he negotiated with a school bus contractor allowing Framingham to staff buses with local employees. Well, that's not true at all. The school committee asserted that. They have control over the employees they hire. They simply went ahead and hired bus drivers. The thing they didn't have control over was getting the buses for those to drive. And they had a really good deal where they were going to lease to buy buses from Anderson Motors. And that would have been a good deal. Lincoln Lynch did a great job on that. And then comes into the council meeting because they have to approve that kind of thing. And it gets upended by George King with the mayor never intervening, and that thing went south. So then the school committee was forced to rent buses from NRT, the failed bus company. So so far all these facts are fairly meaningless except buying the Southside School. The last fact that really matters is the first one here. It says increase school spending by about 6% every year. And that sounds really grand. That's a lot of money. Sounds pretty good, although we know inflation was 8% and 6% in a couple of those years. But what was amazing is this period of the mayor being in office saw one of the biggest injections of money from the state for students to help particularly low-income students and non-English speaking students and special needs students. It was a big boost of money. And if you look and say, well, is that 6%, taking that into account? Well, if we'd actually done this correctly, our budget would have gone up by 10%. That's what happened in comparable communities who have large non-English speaking students like Springfield. There the budget went up by about 10%. And so here I've got what would have happened if we had allowed the full force of that boost of Student Opportunity Act money to happen. We would have had in fiscal year 23 an 8% increase, and fiscal year 24 10% increase rather than the 6%.